this day, it being Moth Week where we encourage people to learn about and study moths that occur where they are. We have a look at a few of the moths from my garden moth trap been running last night, and not go through absolutely everything. Partly because I've got other things I need to do this morning, and partly because I forgot to take my gimbal home with me. So I'm hand holding this device, which is not always ideal for these broadcasts. It can be a bit wobbly. So I thought we'd just have a look at a few of the more interesting specimens and a few of the things that are sitting still and behaving themselves, rather than looking at everything else. So with that, I'm going to turn the camera around and we'll start to have a look at a few things. So you can see here the moth trap I was using. This is essentially a box with a light bulb on top that attracts moths. Moths, as people know, I suspect, come to light. And they drop into this box. They sit on the various egg boxes, which you can sit here, which were inside there. And then might get up with sunrise in this case and have a look at what was in there. So we'll have a look at one or two of the specimens that have been sitting around either in there or nearby. And we'll start with this one. My hand near it, weirdly, I can see exposure better. This is a least carpet, common enough species. It is one of the species in this that has really expanded its population in recent years. It's doing rather well as a species. Fairly small, you can see it beside my finger there. And a common species, lots and lots of these in my garden regularly. But I thought it was worth. We'll start with that one because it's sitting there. And another one which is sitting down quite nicely, so we'll have a look at again another common species. This is a yellow shell moth. Yellow, I suspect, is obvious, and the patterns are thought to look a bit like a shell with all those different lines. Gives us sort of a rough texture and appearance. So again, it's a fairly common species. Quite a few of them. This moth, which we'll have a look at now, this rather red moth with this attractive zigzaggy pattern on it, is a rosy footman. It's quite exciting to get this. I think this is the first time I've recorded this species in my garden. It's again a species that I believe is expanding in its population. I found a few in the local area for the first time last year. I think it was possibly the year before. So it seems to be expanding its population. It seems to have arrived in the area. And above it is one of the Japonomuted ermines. They're quite a tricky group to identify. Can't really be certain what species that is from outside. But that's your rosy footman. A species that, again, is fairly recent to the area, but is not perhaps nearly as welcome as the others. This is a box tree moth. It's an introduction to Britain. It's another pest species, and it feeds on box plants, hence the name. Quite a pest for gardeners who have them as ornamental plants in their garden. And this is the typical form of it, white with this dark border. It's rather an attractive moth, even though it's a pest, but it does have another form, which I will attempt to show you here. This is also the same species, but is a darker form of it. Apologies if the camera flipped around a bit at us there. It does do that sometimes. Another species that is a comparatively recent arrival in this area is this one. This is a tree lichen beauty. And this is a species that's probably been here about 15 or so years now. But when I first got this got one of these locally, this was really exciting. If you read the books, you read the literature, they all said that this basically only occurred in Britain as a hyper rare migrant, only occurred, sort of single or double figures of total records since recording began. And it's a species that since then has really colonised the country, has really arrived. The name tree lichen beauty suggests what it feeds on. It feeds on lichens, or lichens if you prefer that pronunciation, on trees. And I suspect its ability to establish itself and be here in part is because the improvement in air quality since various bits of legislation were passed to remove the use of coal as a domestic fuel or to significantly reduce it and reduce the amount of air pollution has meant that the lichen fauna has massively improved. And so the thing these moths feed on, the thing that caterpillars feed on, have expanded, and so there's been a place where the moth can live. So tree lichen beauty now, at least here in this part of London, is a remarkably common moth. We get lots and lots of them at the right time of year, which this is. But you just go back 20 years and this didn't occur here at all. And a moth that I was quite glad to see, a common one here, but one I don't get very often, is the herald moth. This is the herald moth, so called I suspect because of that rather shield-like shape, reminding people of heraldry. This is a moth that actually lives quite a long time in this adult form and will spend a large part of the winter, autumn and winter and in early spring, hibernating underground somewhere. Hibernating is not strictly the correct word for what moths do, but sleeping for winter underground. It's a common species, but it's a very attractive one, and it's not a species I see very often in my garden. So again, I was very excited to get this, very happy to get this morning. And we'll have a look at one more nice large moth, which I will fish out of the trap here. Oops. So I'll rest this one on my finger. So this, oops. They're usually much more content to sit on your hand than that. This is a poplar hawk moth. Relatively large moth, one of the commoner of the hawk moths, but it's always an impressive feature. So what I'll do is I will try and pose that here on the fence. Oops, it does not want to sit still today. It's a very badly behaved poplar hawk moth. Well, we'll have a look at it down here on the ground. And that seems like a good moth to end this little broadcast on. The poplar hawk moth, again a really common species. It was my first one of these this year. It's been a very slow year. So we'll end there, having a quick look at that, and then I will go and finish just documenting what I've seen so that all the records can be submitted to the National Recording Scheme. Thanks everyone.